not remain in the body to feel that. I went about 100 feet away before the impact and turned around and watched it happen. And it happened in very slow motion, suddenly, just like that, instantaneously. I was in this lustrous bath, and it had this kind of sheen, like gasoline in the sun on the surface of water. And it felt like velvet. And I felt perfect. I mean, nothing can ever hurt me again. But the world is just a dream.
My guest today is Cailin Callaghan, and you guys are in for a treat. She had a near-death experience where she realized that this entire world that we're living in is a dream. So, Cailin, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really stoked to be here with you.
This is going to be a great conversation. We have a couple of topics we're going to cover today. I'm going to start with your near-death experience, but you also are a channeler of Damon Michael, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. But since the near-death experience was really where it started, I'm going to let you just tell that experience in any way that you would like to share it.
Okay. Well, a tiny bit of context ahead of time. I knew from the time I was 5 years old that I had a spectral companion, as I like to call it. And the way I recognized him was typically he lit me up with what I call chi rushes or chi resonance, or frisson is the French word for it, le frisson. And that's the goosebumps all over your body. And this has always figured very prominently in my relationship with Michael. Anytime he wants to draw my attention to something, he just lights me up. So I knew he was there. And at the age of 15, I capitulated to my family. Everybody but Dad had said, not real, imaginary friend. Michael doesn't exist, okay? And they discouraged me, and that was a big stumbling block for a long time. They just marginalized me and said, don't talk about this. People will just think you're nuts, right? So I kept it to myself. I was, after all, studying to be a biologist and didn't want to wreck that. So then at the age of 15, I set him aside. I decided they were right, and he kept talking to me, but I just didn't pay any attention to him. And I began to engage in a whole lot of risky behaviors because kind of the magic went out of my life and the feeling of hopefulness when I set him aside. And at the age of 20, one of the risky behaviors I was engaging in was horseback riding. And this particular day, I had forgotten to bring the grain to lure the stallion, who did not like to be ridden, into the small paddock. I caught easily the barrel mare. Her name was Ticker, and she liked people. She liked me a lot, and I liked her a lot. And I figured I would just ride Ticker. A barrel mare is very maneuverable, and I figured I'd just ride her and haze the stallion into the paddock. And my friend said, that's a risky idea, the girl I was there to ride with that day. You're not that good a rider. And I wasn't either. I fell off all the time. And Michael said, not a good idea. You fall off the horse all the time. And, when I was 20, I was like immortal. I was young, I was strong, and I really didn't care if I died, okay? Because the magic had gone out of my life. So I tried it, and in the middle of it, everything went into slow motion, and I was very close to his rump, standing in the stirrups with the saddle bumping my bottom every stride. And I began to see his rump rising up in really slow motion, and Michael said, he's kicking. And I responded, so what? He can't get me up here. The hubris, right? He kicked me right here in the face. Now, I did not remain in the body to feel that. I have had a long history of bilocating instantaneously, just leave the body. And I went about 100 feet away before the impact and turned around and watched it happen. And it happened in very slow motion. I watched the body flopping on the rump of the horse and thought to myself, I hope her feet don't get stuck in the stirrups. And then she went over the back of the horse and she landed on her head. And then the shoulders and the hips hit, and then the legs hit the ground, and the dust flew up and like hung in the air because it was really slow motion. It was just like, and suddenly, just like that, instantaneously, I was in this lustrous vast, and it had this kind of sheen, like gasoline in the sun on the surface of water, and it felt like velvet, and I felt perfect. I mean, perfect. Uh, an astonishing level of perfect, so perfect that I noticed it. It was like, wow, I feel absolutely perfect. Nothing can ever hurt me again. Okay? Interesting commentary on your life. The moment you get out of it, that's your first thought. Nothing's ever going to hurt me again. And then Michael was instantly there. He was already there, but he made me aware of his presence by saying, nothing could have ever hurt you to begin with. You're an eternal being. And I said, wait a minute. In the first place, there was an instant of, it's you. Of course. Okay. They told me you're real. Okay. And then in the next instant, it was like, I'm eternal. So if that's true, and I could taste that it was true, truth, I recognized his electromagnetic signature, okay, which is unique to each of us. I tasted it and knew him. And it's not really like with your tongue, it's like your own vibrational field resonates with the others. And so I recognized him through that, but it's most similar to taste in all the senses, at least for me. And when people are lying to me, I taste it as well. It's a kind of, yeah. Um, anyway, so I said, if that's true, and I can tell it is, I can taste it, why was it so scary? And he said, well, it was scary because you believed you could suffer loss and die. But that was necessary. We have to intensify the experience with those beliefs in order to get you to actually believe in the experience, to take it seriously. Because if you hadn't taken it seriously, you would have never done what you went there to do, nor would you have learned what you went there to learn. And I said, well, I can't remember what that is. What did I go there for? And he said, you went to summon your will. And I said, what? I went through all of that just to learn what I wanted? And he said, no, you misunderstand what I mean by will. I have to show you. So suddenly, again, I'm an 18-month-old baby. And I'm laying on the floor screaming and kicking because my mother has just put my first pair of brand new shoes on me. And I'm thinking it's punishment because they're uncomfortable and that she's tied me to the floor because I'm thinking I'll never be able to walk in these things, right? So I'm pitching this fit. And then suddenly I'm my mother. I'm my mother thinking, oh, my poor child. She's a little amused, a little hurt, a little concerned, not at all angry with my terrible behavior. She's thinking I saved up because we were a poor family. I mean, literally, my mom was like saving green stamps, which were a thing at the time, in order to get me these shoes. Okay. And they were supposed to be a good thing to protect my feet because I was always getting stickers in my feet. Okay. And suddenly I realized from knowing her perspective that I had taken what was supposed to be a blessed good thing. And by the story I told myself about it, I had made it a very bad thing. Okay. I had created all the trauma by what I had been thinking about the situation. It was actually a very good thing. Suddenly, I'm back with Michael, and I'm like, did I do that? Did I actually just make a good thing a bad thing by my self-talk, by what I see? He was like, that's exactly what you did. So then suddenly I was in another scenario. And in that scenario, it's kind of interesting because it was an assault, and I was only 5 years old, and it was my granduncle. And I had left my body at 5 years old and first encountered Michael because of that event. And Michael had taken me away to this soft light place where these jeweled beings were. Okay. Like showing a child a mobile over their bed or shaking the keys at them when they're to distract them, right? So he took me out of this. And so even though I knew what was happening, okay, in a story, I was someplace else, and the story, the significance I assigned to that assault was that was how I met Michael. Okay. Which has been the most transformative relationship and the most nourishing relationship in my whole life. And so, out of this horror of what was actually happening to my body, I had found an Easter egg by the bog in the rushes. Okay. I had found the pearl of great price, the blessing in the horror. And I had, by as I assigned it, the label I assigned it, the significance I gave it, I had made this horror transform to something blessed. This is alchemy. This is our power. It's in the stories we tell ourselves that our power is. And so suddenly I'm back with Michael, and I say, is that what I did? I took a horror and turned it into a good thing by making you the relevant thing, that I had met you because of it. And he said, that's exactly what you did. You use your magic. We all have it. As you say a thing is, so it is for you. Okay. So there were, during that particular vignette, it was interesting though, because as the child, I had gone out of my body during that event. And as the 20-year-old, I was back, and the 5-year-old was aware of my presence. Okay. So the 5-year-old, I had circled back through time, and she, my 5-year-old self, was aware of my presence, the older version, and of Michael. Okay. So it created this interesting loop in time that has some significance we can talk about another time. There was a couple of other vignettes. Both of them were of the same theme, where I had either taken a good thing and made it bad by my labeling, or I had taken a bad thing and made it good by my labeling. And so suddenly I'm looking at this and I'm saying, this is the cause of all the suffering in the world. Uh, this is what causes all suffering. And I began to laugh at how ridiculous it was that we trick ourselves with our own godly power into believing that we are beset by a world making us unhappy, when it's really the world's doing what it's doing, and we're assigning the labels that make us happy or unhappy. Okay, so offloading our power, disempowering ourselves by blaming the world. Okay, so we laughed, and we laughed about this. This was a cosmic jest, and it's hysterical from the other side that we can convince ourselves by our power that we're powerless, that we can disavow our power by the power of our vow. This is silly. Anyway, and then we began to cry because it was the source of all the suffering in the world. And I was becoming more and more, recapturing more and more memory and orientation of myself outside of this venue, my true eternal self. And I was becoming this genderless being. I had no sexual identity, but I had both male and female traits. And I was a really heroic being, just really rash. As Michael says, he's really rash. Okay. But, and also just full of love. It was heroic love. And I said to Michael, I have to go back. I have to tell everybody this is what's causing all the suffering. But the world is just a dream. Clearly, it's just a dream. How do I get back into a dream? And he said, well, you get back into it the same way I taught you to get back into your own dreams that you had wakened from when you didn't want to. You just focus all of your attention on the last moment you can recall from the dream, and you summon your will, which is what I had come to the world to do, to summon my will. You summon your will to return, and it is by doing this that you tunnel back into that experience, because the last moment contains nested within it, like Russian dolls, every antecedent condition that led you to the lustrous vast. You can go back in time. You can avoid the accident that actually killed you and brought you here, but then you won't recall everything you just learned because it'll be part of a different timeline. So if you want to go back and tell the world, you have to go back into the last moment and deal with the repercussions from the accident that killed you. And I didn't even say goodbye. I didn't ask what condition my body was going to be in. I was absolutely identified as this rescuing, loving being that would do anything to end the suffering, anything. From that side, nothing is too much to ask because it's a blink of an eye and it's not even real. It's just a dream. Will you go back into a dream to make everybody stop suffering? Oh, yes, absolutely. I'll go right back in. And so I didn't say goodbye. I didn't think it would work the first time, tunnel back into a dream. And I put my attention on seeing the horse's rump rising in the air and hearing the hoofbeats. And I willed to return, and there was this great rushing, like wind, like I was just this wind. And I was back in the body, and it was highly wrecked. It was in bad shape. It didn't know up from down, literally. When I finally got to my feet, which took several tries, my brain told me that I was upside down. So I was having a very hard time walking because proprioception has a lot to do with how you coordinate your movements. If you think you're upside down, it's hard to walk in the sky. It's hard to walk with your feet in the sky, right? It's kind of confusing, but the only thing that told me that I was actually upright was I could feel the pressure of the earth pushing against the soles of my feet. And so I just went on memory of how does a person walk when they're upright, even though it feels like you're upside down. Don't pay any attention to that. Okay. And so proceeded from there. And I remembered everything right away. I started trying to tell people, not that very moment, but within just a couple of days. And what I got from people was, it's okay. It's just the brain damage. It'll get better.
Wow. Oh my gosh, so many questions about this. The first thing I want to say about your NDE, I love it when this happens in an NDE because I think that this has the power to help relieve people. And that is that even though you were, as somebody watching, would be assuming that you're experiencing a great amount of pain as you're being hit by that horse and knocked through the air and knocked off. I love it that you had already left your body. And even though the body was still moving and doing all of those things, it wasn't you. And the reason that I think this is so comforting is for somebody who's experienced a loss, we often suffer because we think about the last moments and how horrible they were for that person. And we wish we could have changed something, did something, and exactly say that again. Say that again.
They are not there. They are not there. The body is doing its thing. Okay. Michael says to me, the dead are what those who imagine themselves the living call a corpse. Okay. We have a lot of ideas. We can't experience death except for to witness someone else's. Okay. Because when your body falls off, you barely notice it. It's going, oh, look at that. My body fell off, right? That's how the dead experience it. Wow. Surprise, surprise. All right. So really, it's when you stay in the body, and this is why I became so good at vacating it. I've always known it's much better to just leave and let the body do its thing because it's going to go through a whole lot of trying to return to homeostatic, level. And it's going to do what other people will witness as suffering and perhaps witness it as dying. And as long as your consciousness is in the body, it's going to be uncomfortable. But you can leave. And a lot of times, I think when people die suddenly, they just leave. And oh, I've left mine many times, my body many times. When I was about to get a strapping, I just left the body a lot of times. So it's and the body functions fine without us for quite a while, actually. It's amazing.
Kind of like a chicken with its head cut off.
Exactly. Really, really, it's a lot like that.
Okay, let's talk about the lustrous vast. Did I say that right?
Yeah, the lustrous vast. I don't like to call it the void because everything is there. Nothing is there, so everything is there. You can't have everything unless you have no particular thing. So everything is on the brink of being there. So it is there in hypothetical state, waiting for you to push it over the edge into experience. Manifestation, including this world, is in the lustrous vast. Everything is in the lustrous vast. And so when you realize that, you can realize too that the people that are dead they have not left at all. They are actually where you are. In fact, Michael, you're in the lustrous vast. You just think you're in a world. Imagine you've put on a headset or a mask to stick your face underwater to see what's going on under the surface of the water, okay? That's great. Now you've got a view of what's going on down there and you can hear what's going on. You can't hear anymore what's going on out here, all right? So they're still with you, and if you're paying attention, you inwardly, you can still interact with them. And that's what a medium does. So yeah, the lustrous vast, I don't call it the void because it's not empty. It's not really empty.
Makes so much
Quantum
sense.
immanence. Quantum immanence, Michael calls it. He says it's imminent because it's just about to happen. It's imminent. And it's immanent because it's within all things. You're woven through. I tell people there is no world out there because there is no out. Everything is happening in consciousness. And the world you think to be outside you is a dream space nested inside consciousness. There are like lots of dream spaces I call venues that are divided frequentially by the frequency of the energetic structure and signature of those venues. So yes.
Did you just create a new word, frequentially? I love it. I've never heard anybody say that before, but it makes perfect sense.
That's what I love about American English. You can construct words on the fly and everybody knows what the heck you're talking about, as long as you put your accent on the right syllable.
That's cute. Well, let's talk about this Michael character. So, okay, I know that you said Damien Michael is the
Damon.
Damon,
Damon, Daemon, Damon.
Okay,
it's not
Damon?
a name. It's not a name. It's a function.
Okay, what's the function?
Okay, the way he has explained it to me, and all of this is on need to know basis. Apparently, I take a little bit of information and go a little too far with it, so they only give me as much as I need at the moment. I improvise a lot, and I get into trouble. But a daemon, as it is explained to me, is like, okay, so when you become lucid or uh, no longer identified with the body, the story, the mind, and you are in a state of awareness, aware of its awareness. Okay. You come to a place of spiritual, I don't think that's the word we want. Thank you. You come to a space of spiritual overview where you become aware of your existence gradually over time in many different venues. There's just like I have at least 5 that I'm aware of, other venues that I'm active in. Okay. When you realize that your creations, everything you have created, is in your field. Right? It's actually in your field. It's like garments, spiritual garments. Your field, your electromagnetic signature is what you wear in other realms, okay? You begin to, like, say, I'm a writer and I've written fiction as well, and I've got these other characters that I gave horrible backstories to so that I could create drama because drama sells, not peace and quiet and everything going well. Okay. So now these characters I have created are just as real as this character is real. They're just as unreal as this character is unreal. We're fabrications. What is real is the consciousness itself. Okay. So when you get to that stage, you begin to go backward, so to speak, into these creations' lives, and you begin to massage their perceptions, like Michael is massaging mine. Okay, teaching me how to see and be in charge and in control of what I say to myself and what I create, okay, in order to reconcile the kind of, I guess you would call it, blemishes, the aspects of your spiritual garment that no longer satisfy or suit you. And so you begin to correct them. You bring them to their own enlightenment. So this is in my next 3 books in the series, the fiction series. I have to bring all those characters to their own enlightenment, right? Because I owe them that. And so the daemon function is to do this particular action, the going backwards into time and stewarding other incarnations of yourself to their own, what is the word I would use for it? I don't want to say enlightenment, but that's what we call it. We call it enlightenment, but it's empowerment. Okay, it's really learning what you are by eliminating what you are not. You're not the body, you're not the story, you're not the mind that attacks your peace. You are the consciousness in which all of that unfolds. And so I am an incarnation of Michael's. And Michael has been stewarding me as my daemon. Okay. The old Greek expression daemon is a benevolent guiding spirit. Okay. Well, in the way Michael presents it to me, your daemon is basically your higher self outside of time.
So this Michael, would others label it him differently as angel, archangel? Because that's the feeling I got when you first started talking about him.
Yeah. But I've asked him specifically, are you the Archangel Michael? And he says, no, but we're both of the same soul group, the Crystal Soul Group. And we're engaged in the same mission when it comes to Earth Venue. That mission is the lucidification of Earth Venue, the Christification of Earth Venue, the end of suffering. And he tells me that it will end first, very much like A Course in Miracles, like Yeshua says in A Course in Miracles. It will end first by the happy dream in which things all reconcile. And that happy dream is when, you gain control over your own vocalizing, over your own projecting thoughts, so that you begin to create your lucid in the dream. And so you begin to create lucidly what you want instead of unconsciously being carried along by the momentum of your conditioned personality. So you break free of that personality and you discipline your mouth. You've seen the pictures of Kali, the goddess Kali. She's biting her tongue. That's not a lurid gesture. She's biting her tongue because she can destroy worlds with her utterances. Okay, so in order to take control of your reality, you have to stop with the dramatizing and negative self-talk and the things that you normally say, like, I hope it doesn't go this way. You don't say that. Okay. You say, it shall not go that way. It shall go this way. And then you focus your attention and you tunnel into that dream. You tunnel into that experiential time stream by focusing your attention and your will, by summoning your will, which is what I came here to do.
Wow.
Apparently, my will is the lucidification of Earth Venue. I want everybody to have this skill set, because none of the craziness that's happening in the world would be happening right now if the majority of us, if even 30% of us, had this skill set.
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned different timelines. And when you were describing going back into the human body to resume your human earth, you had choices of where you were going to enter back in. And if you decided, I don't want to have this accident and go through what the body's going to have to go through, I can go in. But then that would create a different timeline, because you would no longer have the experience of being on the other side and be bringing that back. So what can you share with us about what you have now understood from an experience these many years ago and the integration of that experience about timelines?
Okay. Constantly timelines are okay. All potential timelines exist simultaneously in a state of superposition. By superposition, I mean they don't exist anywhere. They exist as potentials. They are hypothetical. Okay. So they exist as hypothetical only until consciousness goes into them, like reading a book, and experiences them. Okay. And so the trick is to keep your attention focused on the event cascade or the timeline, whatever you want. He likes event cascade, that you want to experience, that you will to unfold. Okay. So as a for instance, and you begin to, as you advance and become more sensitive to these layers of integration, all right, of inside and outside, and how what's going on in here shapes everything out there. Okay. You begin to see the branching. Oh, if I do that, this is likely to occur. And if that occurs, then it might go this way and it might go that. Okay. You begin to think in those terms all the time. For instance, I sat on my NDE for 45 years. I didn't talk about it because I had a career I wanted to build in biology. I was studying biology at college level. And I knew that this is simple anticipation of consequences. If I spoke of this in that particular day and age, 1978, that I was going to discredit myself and I would be marginalized among the science community, who are all empiricists, but they're not very good empiricists, a lot of them, because they don't leave their mind open to the potential of things that they don't have measuring instruments for. Okay, they go, we don't study any of that because we can't measure it. Okay, but that's very poor empiricism. You don't just discredit what doesn't work with your model. You adjust the model to reflect the data set. Okay, so I sat on this for 45 years until I went through Lexapro withdrawals, and I was quite certain I was going to die. I mean, I was really sure I was going to die. And had I not, for instance, had this background in lucidity from the NDE, okay, I frankly did not survive that Lexapro withdrawal. It took a year to get over it, and I physically, and I, the little I, the I used to think I was, did not survive it because I had the real me consciousness to supervise my mind and my body every instant of the day for 9 months straight, or the body was going to kill itself. Okay, because it was suffering very deeply. So I had to guide the thoughts, because any thought that I allowed to enter entertainment in mind space would be instantly translated into terrible bodily symptoms. Okay. So basically, you begin to not just consider the consequences in a short term aspect as to what you're doing and how it's going to repercuss through time. You begin to see a much larger overview, and all these timelines are available depending upon how well you're able to focus your attention, because that's all it is. You never go anywhere. Your attention focuses from here to there to there. But you don't physically move. You're having a dream of physically moving, but this place doesn't exist in space-time. It's actually in consciousness, which is why all timelines, all event cascades are available constantly as potentials, hypotheticals.
So would it
I
work
hope I
this
answered that.
way? So for example, let's say that I have a job and a job opportunity in another state comes up with my company. And I think about it for a long time and I decide not to take it and I decide to stay put. Is there another timeline that is branched off where my attention is no longer where I did take that job and I did move to another city and have a totally different earthly experience than I did by staying where I was?
Yes, absolutely. Like I said, they all exist simultaneously in superposition. They are hypothetical timelines, and the way you get into them is by focusing your attention into them and doing so intensely enough, cutting off input from your eyes and ears in this world so that you can keep your attention focused. And you can have those experiences if you will to. Uh, in 1995, I began waking up not knowing where I was regularly. And I would not know who I was. And otherwise, I was functioning perfectly. And I would get out of the bed and turn on all the lights in the house and wander around until the memories had all resettled. And I would still feel like it was just a story, and that I had wakened as a stranger in my own story. There was no, I loved everybody, but there was no particular sentimentality. There was just this impersonal love. And I would go to sleep and wake up in the morning and be back in my life. But that happened over and over and over again. And then I wakened one day with that condition again, pieced my life back together, remembered all the relationships, and I never really found my way back to that. I just relearned how people expected me to relate to what we had been through together, memories we had shared of things we'd done, things we'd gone through. And so I really feel like something happened at that time where a different version of me transplanted itself into this time stream. And I don't really know how that happened, but I was having a lot of very intense lucid dreams of being in other venues. And I would waken from those dreams in this venue and not know where I was. So I'm thinking that it happened to me, and I don't have conscious memory of making the choice to go into this time stream of this life event, but I'm quite certain that that's how it happened. It's just I focused my attention here and took up residence in this form. So I don't know if that makes me some sort of a walk-in or what, but it was a very awkward experience for a long time because people expect you to have big emotional reactions because I've always been a very, very emotional person. And I can recall, and I still feel occasionally really big, strong gushes of emotion, but I no longer regard them as me. They are some story I'm telling myself. So, yeah, they're all available.
Interesting. It feels in some way like the NDE for you actually took you a little bit out of the human experience more than some others that I've spoken to. Do you feel that
It
way?
did. It did. Yeah, it did. I love everybody. Okay. But and I mean I have to work at it for some people. I have to remember, I have to train my self-talk. I have to not click the angry button and instead click the care button and remind myself, no, really, it's right down to that granular, right? I get angry when I read something and then I go, no, that's not the reaction I really want to have. I want to train myself to, remember that everybody has been a small child that was traumatized into being however they are now as adults. And remember the small child, even though the adult is doing something I really normally feel is reprehensible, at the same time, I have to remember they didn't start out this way. Okay. And they're having a very bad dream. Okay. They're going through some stuff, right? So there's no pain, honestly, worse than having to look at and reckon with the things you have done, that they don't fit in the field of your garments that you want to wear. They're not. And so I think a lot of times we actually come back and relive events, just like the event, just like I had to come back before, at the point where the accident happened, and go through the aftermath in order to remember what I learned in the lustrous vast. If you change time streams, you're not going to remember it.
Wow. This is a very deep rabbit hole.
It
But
really is.
it
It
is. It
really
is.
is, because you can take, people, you're walking into a new time stream every moment of every day. Okay, your paths are splitting in front of you. My little sister said to me once, Colleen, life is like an acid trip. Every moment in an acid trip, you're either thinking the thoughts that lead to a good trip or a bad trip. And when you're on acid, you can see it happening. You can observe that you're choosing the thoughts that lead to a good trip or a bad trip. And then when the acid wears off, you no longer feel it, but you still remember it. You still remember that it's the thoughts you're choosing that lead to the trip that you're going to have. It's just that you have to remember to choose actively. You have to remember to pilot your ship.
Interesting. I haven't heard that about LSD that way. That's a super interesting perspective. I want to talk a little bit about, can I call it a life review? Do you call it a life review?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when I first started doing this channel, the real reason I wanted to interview people who had had near-death experiences is because of the life review. Because
Mm-hmm.
when we understand that we're going to experience all the events in our life, not only from our perspective, but from the perspective of everybody else we interacted with, and then we're going to judge ourselves about those, I think it really makes people pause and think a little bit differently about how they're going to be in the world. Such a different perspective. And you shared some really very deep and personal parts of your experience. And I love how the lesson that you were given was about the thoughts you had around them caused them to either feel positive or negative. Can you share a couple more? Because I just think that these are so important, of maybe some things that you would not have thought were significant, that when you experience them in that state were way more significant than you would have ever given them credit for?
You mean like from my own life review?
Yes.
Okay. In my life review, Michael was, okay, you'll have to remind me how we came in here. This is a deep rabbit hole. Okay.
It was a deep
All
rabbit
right.
hole.
When my, there were two, the point of my NDE was to remind me of why I was here. So I didn't have an entire review of my life. I had like, okay, you know how when you're in one room and you go into another room to get something or do something, and you get in there and you go, wait a minute, I can't, why did I come in here? Oh, shoot. You turn around and you go back to the first room, and then you go, I got it. And then you turn around and you hold it in memory as you go back to the other room, looking for a lighter, looking for a lighter, looking for a lighter. And you get into the other room and you find the lighter, right? Okay. Well, that was the whole point of my life review. It was you come into Earth venue, you forget why you came here, all the stuff you go through. Oh my God. And then you have the life review. In my case, it reminded me you came to summon your will, and this is your will. So that was the point of my life review. And so it was only vignettes that were chosen to show me what I did with the raw material of the event. What magic did I work with it? Did I fall into the sad story, or did I transform it by my will? Okay. So, for instance, the third vignette that I had, they were through time like 18 months old, then 5 years old, and then I was having. Okay, my dad had a terrible temper, the poor thing. He was absolutely out of control. He was so identified with his own pain and his own stories, and we had definitely a karmic relationship. I have never loved anyone so much ever again in my entire life, the way I loved my father, okay? And I suffered because I loved him so much. And I suffered because he had a terrible temper, all right? And um, we, even though it was really abusive, he was not a bad person. He was just caught up in his pain. And every time he would blister me, he would weep and apologize afterwards, which hurt me even more. But I knew that I had to forgive him as quickly as possible, because as long as he was suffering, I was suffering. Okay. And this is where the division between us, between he and I, began to break down in my perceptions. Was if he was suffering, I could feel it. I could feel it in my own body. Right. So, the third vignette was my dad whipping my ass. And it was a particularly poignant thing that I did in this. He had taken to giving me his pocket knife and warning me to be careful because it was very sharp, and sending me to get the switch he was going to strike me with. And I got it every day. And some days twice from the time I was about 2 years old. And at about 12 years old, yeah, I was 12, this was the last time he ever struck me. And while I was getting the switch, I had decided I was not going to cry. I was going to try and break through to him while he was hitting me. I wasn't going to show anything. And this was a big deal for a kid my age. It was like all these emotions. And he started striping my legs with this switch. And I just stood there. I actually gave him my arm. And usually he'd take my arm and I'd run a circle around him as he's. I gave him my arm. And I just stood there. I'm here. Go ahead. And I just stood there looking at him. And the first time he hit me, I said, "How will you ever know?" And he hit me again, "that I'm doing what you want because I love you, if you think I'm doing it because I'm afraid of you." And he was dumbstruck. Okay. And so the third vignette was what my love for Dad and my willingness to go through that for him had done to break through to him, because he never struck me again. He literally dropped to his knees and said, he was shuddering. He didn't say anything right away, but when he stood back up, he looked down at me and he wasn't making eye contact. And he said, "Give me my knife, honey. You won't be needing it again." And he never struck me again. So that third vignette was a demonstration of what I had done by focusing my attention and my will on conveying to him a message. And it was to show me the power in that. Okay. Even when someone is hurting you, to love them, and say, "How will you ever know? If you think I'm doing it because I'm afraid of you, how will you know I'm doing it because I love you?" The fourth vignette was interestingly, it snapped backwards in time. My mom and dad had been separated when I was about 6 or 7 years old. They were separated for about a year. They lived apart, and I would go spend weekends at the house I had been born in, because they still owned that house and Dad was staying in there. And even though they were separated, and I was there visiting, I remember looking down the fence line and seeing the honeysuckle on the fence line and seeing the bees and hearing them and the balminess, the perfectness of the air that day, and just being in love with the world, in love with the experience of being incarnate. And so even though there was always this kind of anxiety and distress, when's Daddy coming home, and there was always this distress of, they were living apart, and I had turned it into just the blessedness of living in the moment, of being in how beautiful the moment was all around me, rather than in the thoughts of the situation. So all of it was designed to get me back into the second room with an understanding of my power and our power, where it is intact, so that I could come back into the second room. I tell people a lot of times, when people are dead, they're just in the other room. You know, you don't need to grieve over them. Okay. They're having a much better time than you are. They're just in the other room. Okay. So yeah, there were only those four. Is it four? One, two, three, four. Yeah. Four vignettes. And all of it. I think you can see how that situation, remembering with Dad, just really, it really put me in touch with the immeasurable transformative power of love.
I love that you shared that so much. And we had a really nice chat before the interview started, and you gave me an example. I would love for you to share this too, about how being on the phone with somebody and you're having a customer service issue. And the reason I want you to share this is because, again, this is a gold nugget that you're holding, Colleen. You had this integration, you had these experiences, you saw very vividly in your life how approaching something one way or another really transformed the experience and either caused you to suffer or to flourish. So you explain to everybody about the being on the phone with a customer service person, because I think everybody's in this situation and this is just like such a wonderful learning experience for us all.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't, have never been really, until the last 10 years or so, known for my patience. And in the past, Michael always say, just as my dad did, you catch more flies with honey, you know. But when I was young, yeah, I would interact with people whenever I had to deal with bureaucracy, you know, the county, whatever. I was like, and I deserve, and you know, what kind of service is this anyway? You know, you're a public servant. Have you forgotten that we pay your, you know? I mean, that was you know me as a young person. You know, just let's get this handled for Christ's sake. And by the way, why am I having to call you anyway? You should have done this before. You know, that was just me as a young person. And it's just been in the last few years that this has really taken hold of me, that nothing is happening to me. And I used to think it was happening for me. And indeed, in many ways, it is. It's to show you something, but it's up to you to find the Easter egg in the rushes next to the bog instead of just focusing on the bog. So now when I'm on the phone or doing anything where there's a potential for the timelines to split and go one way I don't want it to go, the good trip or the bad trip, right? And so I prime myself and the other person by realizing there is no separation. We all feel each other all the time. We know when we're lying. We know when we're being disingenuous, and we're just too polite generally to point it out to one another. And we really like to maintain that semblance of separation because we all think we have thoughts that people wouldn't like us if they knew what we were actually thinking. And so we pretend we're separate and give each other privacy that doesn't really exist. So instead of getting on people's nerves and picking at them, I think to myself, you know, these public servants are underappreciated. Uh, they've got quite a demanding job. This is how I prime myself to interact with them. Okay. I don't get on the phone angry. I shut the hell up until I can say something that's actually going to be helpful. Okay. And that is Kali, bite your tongue. And so, yeah, I reach out to people through their humanity. I don't treat people like appliances. Pick up the phone and say, yeah, I need help. You know, the water's been cut off or there's a leak or whatever. I don't do that right away. Hi, this is Cailin Callaghan. Who am I speaking with? Oh, hey, Marla. How you doing today? Yeah, it's good. I'm glad you're doing all right. See, listen, I got a little problem over here, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, you already know what my problem is, and I've already shown you I care about you and how you're doing. You're not an appliance to tend to my situation. And so relating to the person in their humanity and in their need to get some gratification. My God, how often do they get a chance to actually please people? And we all like that. We all like it when we can put a smile on another person's face. I mean, we work all year long just so we can do Christmas and birthdays and stuff and make each other smile by giving thoughtful gifts and things like that. That's the big fun of it, is seeing the person, how they react, right? So I come at them from that perspective. And I do that with everything. I see it ahead of time unfolding the way I would prefer it to unfold. And I don't think I hope so and so doesn't occur. I think it shall go this way. It shall be thus. Okay? And it generally is. There may be various amounts of massaging I have to do. The person who spoke to whomever right before me may have put them in a very bad frequency, and I have to tune them up a little bit before we can make progress. But yeah, I mean, we all have that capacity.
Beautiful. I'm so glad you shared that. I know that's going to help a lot of people. We all know it, but sometimes we just need to hear the reminder of the why we're doing it.
It's true. Don't think that there's a separation. Everybody knows, and don't treat each other like appliances.
I love that.
Care
Well,
about
I'm
each
going to ask
other.
you one more question about your NDE, which was that you said something I've never heard anybody describe before, and that was tasting, which you said was the closest sense that resonated and made sense of this. Tasting that something was true. And then you said something that definitely piqued my curiosity, which is that you have tasted what lying tastes like. How can you
Mhm.
describe this to us? I'm so fascinated.
Okay, well, when I read people and I learned the facility was there from the NDE. I learned that it was true, that I had been doing it all my life. I kind of had the inclination. I know when people are lying. I can taste it. Okay. And what it is your individual field and my individual field affect one another. All right. And you know when you feel a knot in your body in one of your chakras, you know something is going on with the person you're interacting with. You may not have had time or opportunity to focus your attention on what it is. All right. But what I have learned over time is to read the way another person's field affects my field and my body. Okay. And to trust it. And that's the thing. Most people do not trust their own instincts about what they're feeling. And when I tasted truth, when Michael and I recognized Michael by his signature in the lustrous vast, it wasn't tasting, but you know how you sample something, you taste it, you sample it. I sampled his field. Okay. My field sampled his field and let his field into my field so that I could experience it directly. So because because a molecule has its own aroma translated through the body, and it has its own actual taste translated by the body, but it's wedded to the molecule. It is part of the molecule. It is most like tasting to me because the field of a person is wedded to that person. They are intricately, they are intimately a part of one another. They can't be separated. So it's most like taste. It's not measuring air waves. Here's my biology coming out. You're not translating through air waves or anything like that. It's a direct sampling. Okay. So that's the way it's like taste. And it's the same thing when someone is being disingenuous with me, I get it's literally a subtle bad taste in my mouth. And we all know this. We use the expression, yeah, it left a bad taste in my mouth, the way he talked to me. But even though we have that in our language, we're not focused on it. We're not attending to that level of perception. Yeah, it left a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah, I can't say
You
that
know?
I've ever heard anybody describe having that experience, yet everybody listening is familiar with that saying for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's there because we have that level of sensitivity, but we not is it. We say, oh no, that can't be
Wow. This is
real. It's
great.
learning
Oh
to
my gosh,
trust yourself.
I've loved so
Learning
much.
to trust yourself.
I love so much talking about your NDE. And I said that we would come back to your experiences post NDE when you remembered that Michael was part of your experience and that you were him or he was a higher, and I'm saying he, and I almost want to use air quotes when I say it now after how you described it, but Michael is an aspect of the higher self of you, guiding you from a different vantage point, a different perspective. Did I kind of get that right?
Kinda. The way I get it is okay, a Damon has many lives in many realms, many venues, many existences, okay, embodied. And because they're every venue by its frequency, when your field enters that field of the venue, the two interact and cause an interference pattern that is your body. Okay, so you have a body that is perfect for each venue to translate your field in that venue. Okay, So Michael has many different he calls them incarnations because he says it's one damn thing after another when you're in a physical body. Okay, an incarnation. Okay. He has many incarnations and I am one of them. Okay. So as the Damon, we, all his incarnations, are his spiritual garments. And okay, and so rather than have all the suffering in my life in his spiritual garment, he worked through my life with me growing up in order to train me to perceive through these traumas that I went through. He turned the traumas into blessings by showing me how I had power over the labels I assigned to those events, making them a good trip or a bad trip. Okay. So I choose to find the Easter egg, okay, hidden in the rushes by the stinky bog. I don't look at my backyard full of horse shit and think, God, look at all this horse shit. I think there's gotta be ponies here. Okay. It's pony sign. And if it's steaming, they were just here. They're still nearby. A whole lot of poop, many ponies, many blessings, right? So it's the way you prepare yourself to frame it. Okay. By preparing myself, and I've never shared that vignette because it's very personal. By preparing myself for that interaction with Dad ahead of time and saying, I'm gonna try and break through to him, right? I changed the way the rest of our lives went in that moment. He never hit me again. Okay. And he began to respect himself. Okay. And we got really close. So it was, if I've done nothing else right in this life, I helped Dad get past his temper, right? And that's like, he died respecting himself and loving the world, loving everybody. So that's a triumph, and I'll take that. I'll take that Easter egg. I'll have that Easter egg.
I love that. That's beautiful. Well, I would love to hear from everybody who's watching. What about Colleen's NDE really touched you? What did she say today that maybe will help you in some way? I would love to hear from you. And if you've gotten this far and you don't want to comment on that, even if you just write like waking up the collective, those things all help. But I would imagine that there are a lot of people watching right now who would love to get in touch with you. So, Colleen, how can people connect with you? How can they work with you?
Okay, well, I do readings and I do lucidity coaching. And by readings, I mean tarot or I taste your field. I'm going to do that anyway. And you can get in touch with me through my online store, which is crackedpotpublishing.com. I'm sure you'll have it in the description.
Yes.
And that's the best way to reach me. And I also have my own little podcast I've started trying to directly answer this mission, and that's a Magifester Central. So it's the usual youtube.com/Imagifester #1.
There's your other made up word again.
Yeah, that's a technique I learned during Lexapro withdrawals in order to keep my body from ending itself and to avoid suffering, and to avoid worrying. So I can help people with anxiety coaching for how to handle anxiety, and we've written 3 nonfiction books: Master Your Mind and Rise. and rise in lucidity and master anxiety. It's important to mention that I was on Lexapro because of chronic anxiety, several anxiety attacks a day, every day. And I have not had any problem with anxiety since November of 2021. Uh, I've,
Congratulations.
I've learned how to crush anxiety. I have starved it to death. And so I help people with that. And our latest book is The Dream of Awakening, which is about lucidity in the dream of the world. And it touches on my theory of everything, which is we call lucid fractal emanationist idealism. And we can talk about that another time, but it's not a technical book, but it is very much in the vein of A Course in Miracles.
Mm.
And I think I shared that with you. I think I gave you that. Did I not?
Well, thank you. I'm sure you did.
I
I'm sure
think I
you did.
did. I think I sent it to you as an EPUB. So,
Thank you so
yeah,
much.
so crackpotpublishing.com. Come find me, or at Imagifester Central on YouTube.
Wow. This has been such a fun conversation.
It
I
has.
I really appreciate you opening up more than you ever have before and sharing something so deeply personal. I think that these experiences are so valuable because you never know who you're going to touch by sharing some of these. So thank you for your vulnerability today. But more than that, Colleen, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for what you are doing to help wake up the collective. It is so needed right now.
I am so blessed to be on the same team with you. And you are one of the team members, and it's so easy to recognize you. I mean, you just radiate love. And I
Make me
am so
cry.
blessed. I am so blessed that we're on the same team. And every time I find another team member, I just feel like, oh, yes, it's happening at last. After 47 years of waiting, I'm beginning to see, and all of the crazy in the world, all of the crazy that's going on in the world is just like, if you think about it, a nightmare. Literally gone off the rails. Things happening that you would never, oh, surely they wouldn't do that. And then they do. And it's all, people don't realize it, but all of the emotional outpouring and upset that is constantly being generated by outrageous behaviors, the emotional upset itself is generating more outrageous behaviors. Okay? So it's up to us to get a grip and become lucid so that we realize that you choose the good trip or you choose the bad trip. And you're getting upset about something does in no way contribute in a good way to things going back to more civilized behavior.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, we all contribute energy to this. And if you're contributing freaked out energy, you're just adding to the field. So ask yourself, what am I bringing to the field? What is my field adding to the field? Am I stabilizing the field? Am I sending love into the field? Am I treating people like appliances?
Wow.
Yeah. Be in charge of that. Just do that. And you've done very well.
I
And it
agree.
grows. It grows. It really grows in intensity and its effectiveness. So thank you for being team. We desperately need one another, and the world needs us right now.
And I don't believe in accidents. And I am sure so many of you, if you are still here in this conversation, you are part of that team as well. So if you still have questions, you can join me for Wake Up Wednesdays live at 5 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Mountain, 7 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Eastern. But this show is absolutely nothing without all of you who tune in to watch, to listen, and to share these beautiful experiences with somebody who needs them. So thank you, everybody, for watching. There's a reason you found this video. These stories awaken something ancient inside us. Hit subscribe and stay on the path with us.